ワンオンワンテック始まります。今日のテーマはジェミニの進化と責任です。 Google が年に一度開催する開発者会議 Google I の取材で、私は今シリコンバレーの本社に来ております。今回の IO ではジェミニのアップデートに加えて実にいろいろな AI の新製品が発表されました。しかし今アメリカでは AI に関する懸念というのが高まっています。仕事を奪われるんじゃないかなどみんな悩んでいる様子なんですけれども、その大企業 Google は AI の責任をどう考えるのか、今日はスンダー・ピチャイ CEO の直属の部下で研究やテクノロジーと社会の関係を担当するジェームス・マニカ上級副社長に単独インタビューする機会を得ました。ぜひ最後までご覧ください。
Gemini 3.5 Flash was launched at I/O, and Sundar said the cost performance was great, but we wanted to see the Pro model as well too, and which many people have been waiting for. And maybe that's because AI labs have been releasing new models at quite a fast pace. So since you lead the research part of Google and Alphabet, so from your perspective, how intense is the competition with other AI labs? And has there been a real sense of like urgency inside Google?
Yeah, no, I think ever since Google made the pivot, thanks to Sundar's leadership, to be an AI-first company, which is almost a decade ago, there's been an incredible focus just on investing, not just in models, but the whole full stack, whether all the way from the infrastructure to the chips, to the models, to the tools. And I think we've seen, obviously, the competition become even more intense as many others have entered the field, other companies, other frontier labs. So we're still continuing to focus on both incredible research, but also advancing the frontier, but also quite importantly to your comment about 3.5 Pro, to make sure that we're bringing models and innovations that are on the whole Pareto frontier. So we have the Pro models, we have the Flash models, we have the Flash Lite models. We're trying to build models that are useful at different usage points where people are balancing cost, performance, and latency, which has always mattered a great deal to us at Google.
So I think there has been a lot of discussion around catching up in coding capabilities. How did Google accelerate this effort internally? And I heard senior leaders and founders like Sergey Brin join that force. And so what's happening inside the company right now?
Yeah, no, I think coding is one of the important areas when it comes to model development. Keep in mind that in our case, we're trying to build the most capable models for use across our entire ecosystem. So not just for coding purposes, but also we use our Gemini models in search, in YouTube, in the Gemini app, in Google Workspace. So we're trying to advance the most capable models across a full frontier of areas of capability. Clearly, coding is one where our models are good, but not currently not at the frontier of it. So we're clearly focusing on this to make sure we advance it as fast as we can. Hopefully you've seen what we're doing with technologies like anti-gravity and so forth, which we announced yesterday. So I think this is going to continue to be an area of real focus for us, but along with building kind of generally capable models for all the uses we're going to have for them.
Do you think that was a matter of priority? Because for example, Anthropic put so much prioritize on the coding capability or the enterprise capability. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think anytime you have smaller companies or startups or focus, they tend to be more focused on particular use cases. In our case, we're using AI across so many things. So we're trying to build the most capable models for all of our areas. And yes, and coding is one of several areas where we want our most leading models to be able to work in. I mean, you've seen, we focused on areas like science. You probably saw us announce Gemini for Science. So we think the use of this technology is going to be across so many parts of the things where we want to have AI impact in the world.
Okay. And at this year's I/O, I think the Google embedded the agentic AI into so many products, a suite of products. So if we give more and more data and personal information to agents, and the technology behind them, on the other hand, is getting more complex, it's getting more complicated. like to the extent that it's really harder for general people to really understand how it actually works. So how does Google make sure the accountability of its impact?
Well, I think when we think about our impact, we first of all think about, are we building the most useful systems to enable, whether it's individuals or companies in the economy or scientists or society. So we're trying to build the most ambitious and useful systems. So we try to hold ourselves to that. We also try, take quite seriously issues like privacy and all of that. And so one of the things we do is to give user controls. So for example, if you've used the Gemini app, for example, and we have personal intelligence, you have to give it permission to be able to use whatever of your intelligence you wanted to use, whether it's what's in your Gmail or what's in your calendar. So this idea of giving users control to be able to choose and decide what they want to use. And it's always for a user, clearly, it's more useful to me if it knows more about me. But at the same time, if I'm not comfortable with that, I don't have to enable that. So I'm making a trade-off between how useful do I want to make it for me versus, how much of my personal context I want to give into it. Keep in mind that we don't see any of that as Google. Just like we don't see what's in your Gmail, we don't see any of what you're doing with your AI. But I think giving users control, I think, is a very important part of how we're trying to pursue the use of this technology.
Okay. Well, I think AI agents surely makes work more productive and better. But on the other hand, some AI leaders warn that AI could replace many white-collar jobs, or AI honest race between AI labs will never stop. So that makes people more concerned about AI than excited about it these days. Like I saw some polls that showed people starting to show sort of the opposition to AI. But where do you see the future of AI is going? People are starting to sometimes feel hopeless, but how would you address this sort of issue? Not just providing one-off programs like reskill, upskill. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I think if AI is going to be a transformational technology, and you're going to have two things be true. On the one hand, there are all these extraordinary uses for it that are going to benefit society, whether it's for individuals or companies or the economy or scientists. I think that part is true. What is also true is that AI comes with so many other complexities and risks. So both things are true, and we have to solve for both things. And I think I fully understand anxiety that people have, particularly when it comes to AI's impact on the future of work, for example. But I think many of those concerns are, quite frankly, I think some in our industries have overstated the risk that comes with those things. And so when people say, in 2 years' time, we're going to wipe away 50% of the white-collar jobs, I think that's overstating the effect of this technology. I think, on the one hand, the technological advances are moving very, very quickly, but I think how this affects and impacts the real world and the real economy isn't proceeding at anywhere close to that pace. And even when we think about the impact on AI on jobs, I think the following three things will be true. On the one hand, yes, there may be some occupations that may decline because the constituent tasks in those occupations are easy to do with the AI, but there aren't very many of those, at least in the foreseeable future. But you'll have some job declines over time, but you'll also have job growth. And job growth will come from existing jobs and occupations, seeing higher demand for them, and just trying to see some of that, as well as new jobs that will be created. I mean, people forget that in the US economy, just got to remember the numbers for this. If you had gone back to 1945 and compared 1945 to today, something like over 60% of the jobs we see in the economy today didn't exist. This has been the history of technology to create new occupations. So you'll see some job growth, some new jobs grow. The third thing that will happen, I think, is the most dominant thing, and it's a lot of what we're seeing today and we'll continue to see for quite a while, is many jobs will change, because what will happen is people will start to work alongside these technologies. Keep in mind that what we're seeing a lot of right now is task automation. Very little whole job automation because these tools are still rudimentary. They're good at some things, not so good at some other things. So the job augmentation effects, I think, are going to be the dominant effect. In fact, many studies point to this. You can look at the recent ILO, International Labour Organization studies that I've done and others have done that show that the job augmentation is going to be the dominant effect. So I think we shouldn't be terrifying people and saying we're going to wipe out 50% of all the white-collar jobs in 2 years' time. I don't think that's going to be the case.
But we can't really predict how fast AI models can progress, and so that means we can't really predict the future of our life and work. Or how do you see the future?
I think obviously it's obviously very difficult to predict the future, but I think you can at least understand something about the pace of change. I live in San Francisco. We've had driverless cars for 3 years. If you live in Chicago, it's still science fiction. So I think just because the technology is moving fast in one place, in one area, the rate at which the technology diffuses across the economy, across jobs and occupations, I think is going to be far slower. Now, it won't be as slow as maybe it was in the Industrial Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution took 70 years to work itself through. I don't think it'll be that slow, but it won't be instantaneous either. So I think sometimes people confuse the pace of technological advancement to be equal to the pace of how it's going to affect society. It won't be that fast. But I still think there's still things to work on and think about. I think we have to think about skilling. We have to think about how to manage the transitions that are going to happen in the economy, as people either move from areas that are growing, from areas that are declining to areas that are growing, as people require different skills. How do we make those transitions easy and prepare the workforce? So those are still very important things to work on. And I think they'll be fundamentally important, but we shouldn't terrify people to say next year we're going to wipe out 50% of all the jobs, white-collar jobs. I don't think that'll happen.
Okay. And I was also wondering about how you think about the relationship with government in terms of AI. And I was reading the Alex Karp's book, The Technological Republic, the other day. So how are you seeing if the tech industry should be like that, or how should Google work with government, or maybe in a lot of contexts like defense or other the administrative thing, or?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. First of all, we've always said this technology is too important not to regulate, but it's also too important not to regulate well. So I think we have to think about what that actually means in practice, is one part of, I think, your question. At the same time, it's also important to recognize that this technology has become a general purpose technology. It's general purpose infrastructure is what it's become. And so, governments are like organizations too. So just like organizations need to be more efficient, need to use tools, need to use infrastructure, so too do governments. So just like if you're working with a big bank, if you're working with a public sector organization that's delivering citizen services, that public sector organization needs to be efficient at what it does, needs to capitalize on the technology. So in that regard, governments are no different as organizations that do need this general purpose infrastructure. I think when it comes to questions around the military, we've always said, and have said quite consistently, that there should be lawful use of this technology. It shouldn't be used for domestic surveillance. It shouldn't be used in autonomous weapons. I think it's good to see that there's a growing consensus about that, and I think that's how we're thinking about it.
And so when it comes to regulation, what kind of the regulation do we need for AI?
I think for me, regulation has always had two sides to it, and we need both sides of regulation. We need regulation that addresses how the risks and the complexities that come with this technology. We also need regulation and policy that enable the use of this technology because of its potential to drive innovation, transformation, and quite frankly, deliver and help us solve many of the challenges in society. So to me, a balanced approach to regulation should do both things. It's a little bit like how we ourselves think about AI as Google. You probably heard us say we want to be bold and responsible. On the bold side, we're trying to say, how can we be as ambitious as possible to make this as useful as possible to advance the world? At the same time, we should be responsible. So I think regulation should do something similar. I'd also say one other thing, which is, and this is the part that maybe is difficult. This is such a fast-moving technology. And I think we need regulation that's going to be dynamic and adaptable. So often the things you might think of for regulating today might not be the same things you think about 2 years from now or 5 years from now. And so the risk is that regulation sometimes can be very backward looking, where it's trying to solve something that happened 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago and not focusing on the rapid way in which the technology is changing and also adaptable and dynamic enough to deal with that. I think that's probably a new challenge that regulators are going to have to think about.
Quick last question. What do you think about Japan in terms of the adoption of AI?
Well, I remember first visiting Japan when I was a PhD student 30 years ago, doing my PhD in AI and robotics. And one of the things that always excited me about Japan was that Japan was so forward-leaning on robotics and technology and so forth. So I think, that's always been the case with Japan. In fact, Tokyo was actually the second international office that Google opened. So Japan has always had this forward-leaning attitude, I think, to technology and innovation. And I hope that continues as we enter this AI moment, both for AI and robotics. And also Japan taking in a very pro-innovation and balanced approach in the way that I just talked about, looking at both the complexities and the challenge, but also the possibilities. I think there's an exciting opportunity for Japan. I'm excited, by the way, about the fact that Tokyo is going to be our first international city for Waymo.
Oh, right.
So we're very excited about the arrival of Waymo to Tokyo. And
we're waiting for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
というわけでこれから Waymo の自動運転に乗っていきたいと思うんですが、この標識にもですね、オートノマスビークルっていうこの看板の一番下のところにね、自動運転車っていうのが書いてあります。昨年の11月からこのサンノゼ空港はこの Waymo の自動運転車が乗り入れを始めたというところで、カリフォルニアでは初めて空港の中に自動運転が乗り入れるというところで始まったようです。サンフランシスコの空港ではまだテスト段階ということなので、シリコンバレーの中心地であるこのサンノゼの空港からいち早く始まったということですよね。この Waymo のところにピックアップドロップオフゾーンというのが書いてあります。というわけで Waymo のアプリで解消していきたいと思うんですが、このアプリをタップして乗車地を選択してくださいというのが出てきたんですけども、ターミナル A のストップ9、このストップ9ですね、ここを選んで、結構ね混んでるみたいであと16分かかるようなんですが、とりあえずこれ頼んでみたいと思います。これですね。私のイニシャルが上に出てるんですが、ちょっとカメラで見えないかな。というわけで入っていきたいと思います。おい。こんな感じで。グッドモーニングって書いてありますね。で、この車の中のボタンを押します。スタートライド利用開始。
Heading to Maple Tree Inn. Please make sure your seat belt is fastened. For any
本当に
questions, press the
無
call
人で
support
す。
button to speak with a rider support agent.
Is the same as always. So keep your seatbelt properly fastened and your seat upright.
めちゃくちゃ自然に走り出しましたね。
Please make sure you
でも
follow
ね
the manufacturer's
人はいないんですよ
instructions when installing
本当に。
their seats. We may use interior cameras to check on riders, improve our product, and more. But our microphones are only on when you're chatting with us or activate them. So sing your heart out. We can't.
車内にカメラとかマイクが設置されているんですけども、
At
ま
drop-off, if you hear
あこう安全のためにいろん
that
な
means a car or cyclist
データだったりとか車内の様子を
please exit carefully.
チェックしているところのことです。
In the rare case of an emergency, and provide assistance.
緊急時には
Also
こ
use
う
the
サポートセンターと
answer
自動的に
screen
つな
or
が
app
っ
to speak to
て
them at any time.
こう話がねできるということですね。
Finally, you're right.
ペダルとかハンドルには
In
絶対
fact,
触らないでねっ
just
て言ってます。
relax. And thank you for riding with us.
実はシリコンバレー私何度か来ていて、この Waymo も確かもともとね Google の自動運転プロジェクトだったんですけど、その開発が進んでいって Waymo という会社に独立したんですよね。で今もその Google の持ち株会社のアルファベットの傘下にあるんですけれども、以前だいぶ初期の頃に Waymo の取材をさせてもらったことがあって、その時ちょうど今のこの走ってるこの車のプロトタイプができるかできないかまた違う車だったかな、結構初期で2018年ぐらいだったと思うんですけども、その時最初にWaymoのテストカーになったレクサスの SUV の試験的な自動運転車に乗らせてもらったんですけども、なんかその頃はまだちょっとぎこちなさもあったんですよね。でただこうやってもう商用化して一般の人が自由にそのアプリで読んで乗れるようになったということで、かなりもう時代は進んだなと思います。こんな感じで道路上をこうやって見ながら走ってるよっていうのが今ここに表示されていて、対向車とかも来るとこうきちっと検知してるんでしょうね。この絵で表示されるという形です。で Waymo は最近高速道路への乗り入れも始めていて、こうより長距離で広範囲に移動できるようになったということなんですよね。今までは本当に下道だけだったんですけども、かなりそういったところも変化しているというところです。でこの Waymo なんですけど日本でもゆくゆくサービスが開始されるということで、配車アプリの Go と組んで今ちょうど東京で試験走行をしています。ご覧になっている方によってはこう都内でねこの Waymo の車がそのまま走っているのをご覧になった方もいると思うんですけれども、日本交通ですねのドライバーの人がこの運転席に乗って東京の街を走って、データを学習したりしているわけなんですけれども、かなりその Waymo っていうのは高精細に地図を学習して、その地図を学習した範囲で自動運転をしているという仕組みでこれまでやってきて、かなりもうアメリカだと本当にこのサンフランシスコシリコンバレーもそうですしロサンゼルスとか、一番最初に始まったのはアリゾナ州のフェニックスというところだったんですけども、それ以外にも東海岸西海岸いろんなところに今都市を広げているという状態ですね。こういっただんだん車線もね多くなってくるといろんな車が入り乱れてなかなか難しいと思うんですが、今のところかなりスムーズに運転しています。アメリカだとこのね道の広さっていうのがあるのでかなり運転としては楽なのかもしれないですが、東京のいろんな入り組んだ小さい道とかを通っていくとかそういったことになってくると、その自動運転ってのはどれぐらい可能なものなのかっていうのは気になるところですよね。こうやって車線変更もしながら運転しています。信号に入りましたが、ブレーキもねすごい優しいスムーズな感じです。こういう交差点のところだと本当にいろんな車が通るわけですけども、信号もねこの赤ですよっていうのを認識しつつ、歩行者の方もほらここね認識して 車も人もそして信号もいろんなその道路交通状況をね認識して、運転の判断に使っているということですよね。これウインカーも出るんですね。本当そりゃそうですよね。その対向車だったり周りの車が次どの方向に行くのかっていうのは把握しないとこの車も動けないですから、本当にいろんな情報を瞬時に認識しながらどう進めばいいか、どうやって安全に運転するかっていうのを、人間と同じように、あるいは人間以上に複雑な判断を瞬時にしているということかもしれません。なんか道路上の車を見てると、ちょっと前までこの辺りって本当にテスラの電気自動車が多かったんですけど、グッと曲がりましたね今突然はい。ただなんかそんな感じもしないんですよね。なんか電気自動車逆風になってるって話も自動車業界の中でいろいろ言われてますが、そろそろつきますね。2回このハンドルを引けば開きますという話ですね。まもなく着きます。この辺りもホテルも本当に高いのでリーズナブルな宿ですが、どこに泊まるんでしょう。どうやって降りるんだかな。止める場所をファインディングとか探してるのかな。これで降りていいのかな。車が来ちゃいました。車待ってたのね。はい。どこまで行くのかしら。
You're here. Please make sure it's clear before exiting and don't forget any items in the trunk.
で、ドアをロック閉まりました。バイバイ。